Welcome to Leadership is Dead, the podcast that challenges traditional leadership thinking and explores what it really means to lead in a post-COVID world. Each week, we dive into fresh insights and strategies brought to you by leadership expert Dr. Neil McIntyre. Each week, our hosts Liam Williams and Ava Brown take you through thought-provoking discussions based on Dr. McIntyre's latest writings and ideas, which are designed to help you rethink what leadership can be. But before Liam and Ava dive in, let's hear directly from Dr. McIntyre himself as he shares a few words on today's topic. Get ready, because he's here to set the stage for what's coming up.
You know, it's no surprise to anybody that leaders are different than the average person. You know, it doesn't take long if you read any leadership book or you attend any type of leadership seminar, workshop, or webinar. You'll soon quickly realize that leaders are just different than the average person. They believe differently, they see differently, they behave differently. You know, depending on who you talk to, some will say that leaders are more courageous, that they have a stronger backbone than other people, that they have this innate ability to rise to the occasion and excel in situations where the average person may falter. Others would say that leaders have a keen idea of what their underlying values and principles are, and that from those underlying core values and principles, they basically know how to react in any situation, and that their behaviors are consistent because of those underlying core values and beliefs. But you know, if you really spend time with them, I think with leaders, there's another thing that is perhaps even more basic, more central to who they are than anything else. And it's something that most of us struggle with. Now, what I'm talking about here is that if you ever spend a little bit of time with leaders, you will quickly realize that their perception of the world around them is different than most anybody else. They see things that we often overlook. They see things that we may very easily dismiss or ignore or view as irrelevant to that whole situation. But leaders have a different perception. And it's not saying that they're more observant. It's just that in that moment or situation or whatever they're going through, they just view things differently. It's kind of like the analogy of seeing a glass that is half full of water, one person saying it's half empty and the other person saying it's half full. And I'm talking more about simply somebody being pessimistic or optimistic, whereas most leaders are more optimistic than pessimistic, but what I'm talking about is even more basic than that. As a matter of fact, I think if we were to look at leaders and their perceptions, I believe there's three things that we can learn from true leaders. And the first thing is that leaders are opportunistic. Now, what I'm talking about when I say opportunistic, I'm not necessarily talking about that they are better able to detect possible business ventures for themselves that others would, overlook, ignore, or just plain out miss. What I'm talking about is that in very chaotic and high emotion situations, leaders have an ability to maintain a sense of calmness about them that enables them to more accurately view the whole situation as it unfolds. And with that, they're able to keep a more level head, and one that's not necessarily dictated or driven by emotions. And through that, they're able to see the situation in a better, more realistic light than the rest of us. And through that, even in the most dire of circumstances, they can find opportunities there. whether that may be business ventures, whether it may be, experiencing new things. It could also be you getting to know new people who may be interesting, who may wind up becoming very close friends, and who knows where that relationship may end up, whether it may be a personal side of things or even a professional relationship. I think if you really kind of think about it, I believe each one of us would say we know somebody who they could go through the worst situation known to us, and somehow they will come out of it smelling like a rose and benefiting from it personally or professionally. And they're a better person from having gone through that destructive, challenging situation or event. That's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm saying that a true leader demonstrates, is that opportunistic mindset where they capitalize even on the most dire and uninspiring moments. The second thing that is very important to know about a leader's perception is that they easily recognize potential. Now, oftentimes when we see somebody or we meet somebody, we simply look at that person as they are right now. They may look a certain way, they may talk a certain way, they may have a certain mindset, or they may even have a certain perspective of the world, whether it may be a pessimistic or optimistic perception, but we see them as they are in that very moment. Leaders are different because while they recognize how somebody may be in that moment, that's not what's important to true leaders. Because true leaders, in their ability to see potential, they have a better idea of where that person could be in the next few years with the right development, the right coaching, the right guidance. So they're able to project an image of that person based off of the potential they see today. If you follow sports, it's kind of like a sporting scout that goes out to either a baseball game, a football game, and they're looking at this high school kid, and they're trying to judge this kid's ability as far as how it relates to that person's future. As they're watching the game, they're seeing the skill level of that player as it is in that moment, in that particular point in that player's life. But that's not really how they're really truly gauging that player. What they're really doing is seeing where they are now and trying to determine some form of trajectory as far as where that player may be in the near future, whether it may be 3 or 4 years from now, or even with this in professional leagues, it may be where they're at in 8 to 9 to 10 years from now. So what they're doing here is they're evaluating potential, not current skill. And leaders have that. Really, it's kind of like an unconscious process that they have. It's not something they consciously are aware of, but they're always on the lookout for, and that is potential in others. Now, the third thing that leaders have in their whole perception of things is that of being focused on a vision. Most of us, I don't think, are really driven by a particular vision. We may have goals that we want to achieve in our life. We may have a wish list of things that we want to purchase or obtain or do, or whatever the case may be. But it's not anything that's really driving our day-to-day activities. Now, leaders, on the other hand, they have a clear picture and understanding of what their ultimate vision is and where they hope to be at some point in the future. And it's not just that. What they do is use that as motivation to basically break down smaller steps and smaller objectives that each day they work towards, and that will propel them further on that path to achieving that vision. I think most people today if you really talk to them, will say that they're simply trying to get through the day, or they're simply trying to get through the week, because there's really no sense, no direction in what they do. There's no vision there for them. There's nothing that they're actively working towards. And I think that is something that plagues many people in our society nowadays. But leaders are different because leaders know what they want. They have that vision. They know what they want to achieve. And with that, they take part in activities and actions every single day that furthers their progression down that path. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from leaders. But I think perception is probably one of the things that is the most basic thing that we can learn from a leader in how we view the world. And the reason I say it's probably one of the most basic is because I have often heard that our perception of the world around us impacts and shapes our reality. More specifically, if you have somebody with a very positive mindset, then that person will oftentimes have what we would classify a lot of luck. Life just seems to unfold for them. They get breaks that the others of us usually seem to miss. And it has the appearance that their life is easy. And it would be all because of their positive mindset. On the other side, if somebody has a pessimistic mindset, then it wouldn't be surprising for them to encounter a lot of challenges, a lot of troubles, a lot of hurdles, and basically those things would stand in the way of them achieving their goal. So, if we're going to become better leaders, if we're going to increase our leadership skill set, one of the first things we need to do is we need to take on and practice intentionally the perception that leaders have.
Wow. Okay. Dr. McIntyre's talk really got me thinking.
Yeah.
Especially that whole perception thing as the key difference maker for leaders.
Totally agree. It's like all those usual leadership buzzwords, you know?
Yeah.
But Dr. McIntyre just kind of cut through all that. It's like, forget all that stuff for a second. Let's just talk about how you see the world.
Yeah. And that's what was so interesting. Right? It wasn't just like think positive or something.
Yeah.
It was much deeper.
Way deeper.
He was talking about these three specific elements.
Yeah.
Opportunism, recognizing potential, and being vision focused.
Yeah. You know what really struck me was how he framed opportunism.
Yeah.
He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, leaders don't just see opportunity, they sense it, almost like a sixth sense.
Oh, wow.
Especially in the middle of chaos. That really resonated with me.
You know, that reminds me of this project manager I worked with a few years ago. We were in the middle of this massive product launch. Deadlines were looming. Everything was going wrong. And everyone else was totally freaking out. But she was so calm.
Wow.
She just kept saying, like, okay, what are our options? What can we learn from this? He was energized by the pressure, you know.
Yeah.
And it helped the whole team stay focused.
It's amazing how some people can thrive in those situations.
Right.
It makes you wonder, you know, like, are they wired differently or is it something you can learn? So what do you think? Listener, have you ever worked with someone like that? Someone who can just find a way forward no matter what?
Yeah. What makes them tick?
Let us know.
Okay, so let's move on to the second element that Dr. McIntyre talked about, recognizing potential.
Yes.
He said, true leaders see not just who you are, but who you could be. And I think that is such a powerful idea because it suggests this almost unconscious ability to spot hidden talent and potential in others.
It's like they have this internal radar, you know, constantly scanning for potential. He used the analogy of a sports scout. They're not just evaluating the player's current skill.
Right.
They're projecting their future trajectory.
Oh, it's good.
You know, and that really stuck with me because it made me realize that this kind of perception isn't just about seeing things as they are. It's about imagining how things could be.
That's a brilliant analogy.
Thanks.
And it makes you wonder, is this something that we can consciously develop? Can we train ourselves to become better at recognizing potential both in others and in ourselves?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
One that we should definitely delve into. But before we do that,
Okay.
let's talk about the third element Dr. McIntyre mentioned, being vision-focused.
Okay.
He said, while many people are consumed by the day-to-day, leaders operate from a place of vision. Dr. McIntyre made a really compelling case for why having a vision is so crucial.
Yeah, it's almost like it gives you that internal GPS, to help you navigate through all the noise and distraction. It's about knowing where you're going and why, and letting that guide your decisions.
Exactly.
I'm curious, listener, what's your vision? Even if it's just a small personal goal.
Yeah.
Take a moment to think about it. How does it shape the choices that you make each day?
I think that's a great place to pause for a moment and reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a quick breather.
Okay. So we've been talking about these three elements of perception.
Yeah.
Opportunism, recognizing potential, and being vision focused.
Right.
But what really tied it all together for me was his point about how our perception shapes our reality.
Oh, totally. He said something like, the lens through which you view the world determines the world you experience.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
I know, it's so true.
Yeah.
Like, I caught myself thinking about all those times that I felt, stuck, limited by circumstances. And Dr. McIntyre's words made me realize maybe it wasn't the circumstances themselves.
Right.
Maybe it was my perception of them.
Yeah, it's like he was saying that our perceptions are self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
If we believe we're limited, we'll act in ways that confirm that belief.
Exactly.
But if we believe we're capable of more, well, then we open ourselves up to new possibilities.
And that brings us back to that idea of luck,
Right.
which Dr. McIntyre touched on a few times.
Yeah.
And he suggested that people who consistently achieve what we might call lucky outcomes aren't necessarily just fortunate.
Right.
They're often people who have cultivated a perception that allows them to see and seize opportunities.
Oh, I love that others miss.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by those people who seem to just attract good fortune,
Right.
And Dr. McIntyre's insights really made me realize that maybe it's not luck at all, but rather their way of seeing the world.
Exactly.
They're not just waiting for opportunities, they're actively creating them. But what's interesting is that many of those opportunities were situations that other people would have seen as, problems or obstacles.
So it's not that these leaders don't face challenges.
Yeah.
It's that they have a different way of framing them,
Exactly.
They see setbacks as temporary, failures as learning experiences, and obstacles as opportunities for growth.
It's like they're playing a different game.
Right.
And that's a really empowering thought, I think, because it suggests that we can all, learn to shift our perceptions and start seeing the world through a more opportunistic lens.
Which brings us to a really important point that Dr. McIntyre made.
Okay.
This isn't about, toxic positivity or denying that challenges exist. He was very clear about that.
He emphasized that it's not about ignoring the negative, but it's about choosing how we frame our experiences.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that our perception isn't just a passive observation of the world.
He suggested that those with a more positive outlook tend to experience what we perceive as good fortune more frequently.
Because they're more attuned to opportunity.
Precisely. Their positive outlook doesn't make them immune to challenges, but it equips them to navigate those challenges more effectively. They see setbacks as temporary failures, as learning opportunities, and obstacles as stepping stones.
It's like they're playing a different game altogether.
And that's the magic of Dr. McIntyre's insights.
Yeah.
He's not suggesting that we need to become, Pollyannish or deny the challenges.
Right.
It's about cultivating a mindset
that allows us to see the world through a lens of possibility.
Yeah, even when things get tough.
Exactly.
So it's not about ignoring the negative.
Right.
But choosing how we frame those experiences and recognizing the power of that choice to shape our reality.
It's about understanding that our perception isn't just a passive observation.
Yeah.
It's an active force that can influence the course of events.
Right. It's about embracing the idea that we have more agency than we realize.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to that initial spark, excitement I felt during Dr. McIntyre's talk.
Yeah.
It's not just about leadership as this, distant concept.
Right.
But about recognizing the leadership potential within each of us.
And realizing that it all starts with how we see the world.
Dr. McIntyre has given us a whole new framework, I feel like.
Totally.
We're understanding not just leadership, but how we approach life in general.
I agree. His insights are so profound.
Yeah.
And yet so incredibly practical.
They challenge us to look inward, to examine our perceptions, and to consider how they might be shaping our experiences.
And to think it all boils down to perception.
Right.
It's not about some magic formula or personality traits or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that lens through which we view the world.
It's a reminder that we have more power than we often realize.
Yeah.
We have the power to choose our perspective, to focus on possibilities, and to cultivate a mindset that empowers us to lead,
Right.
not just others, but ourselves.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dr. McIntyre's insights,
Yeah.
I'm left with this one final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Okay.
If you could make just one small shift in your perception today,
Mm-hmm.
what would be?
Then how might that shift open up new possibilities?
Yeah.
And lead you down a path you never thought possible?
It's something to ponder as we head into the week ahead. It's funny, we talk about leadership as a big, complex thing,
Right.
but Dr. McIntyre just brought it back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
It all starts with perception, how we see the world and ourselves.
He made a point that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
About the difference between seeing the world as it is versus seeing it as it could be. And that subtle shift, that willingness to imagine the possibilities.
Right.
That's what separates those who simply react from those who lead.
I'm also thinking about what you said earlier.
Yeah.
About those, lucky people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not luck at all.
Right.
But just heightened awareness of opportunities.
Yeah.
That comes from having that leader's mindset.
That perception that Dr. McIntyre was talking about. It's
Yeah,
like they're walking through the world with a different set of filters, noticing things that others might miss.
Right. And they're not just seeing those opportunities.
Yeah.
They're acting on them.
They're taking risks, putting themselves out there.
Right.
Creating their own luck, as they say.
I think that's such a powerful message for all of us. Whether we're leading a team, a project, or just our own lives.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we have more control than we think.
Uh-huh.
And that our perception plays a huge role in shaping our reality.
And that even small shifts in our perception can have a ripple effect,
Right.
leading to bigger changes down the line.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dr. McIntyre's insights, I'm left with this feeling of possibility, like a door has been opened.
I know exactly what you mean.
What about you, listener?
Yeah, what about you?
What's one small shift in your perception that you can make today?
Right. Maybe it's choosing to see a challenge as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Or recognizing the potential in someone you hadn't noticed before.
Whatever it is, hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
Let it guide you this week.
Because even the smallest shift can make all the difference.
That's it for this week's Deep Dive.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
We'll be back next week with more insights and ideas to spark your curiosity.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those perceptions sharp.
That's all for this week on Leadership is Dead. A big thank you to our hosts, Liam Williams and Ava Brown, for their insightful discussion and analysis. And of course, a special thanks to Dr. Neil McIntyre, whose writings and thought leadership have provided the foundation for this podcast. If you're looking for more information on leadership strategies for a post-COVID world, be sure to visit Dr. McIntyre's website at neilmcintyreconsulting.com. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn by searching for Dr. Neil McIntyre. Remember, leadership is evolving, and it's time to embrace new approaches. Subscribe to Leadership is Dead wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next week for another enlightening discussion. Until then, lead with purpose.